I want to welcome to the program Humboldt County Sheriff Bill Honsal. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. How's it going today?
Well, not bad. Really not too bad. I'm glad you're able to join us on the program this morning. Everybody has so many questions. They're always trying to find some answers. We're hoping that you might have some answers or direction to come up with some of the answers. All dealing, of course, with the shelter in place and the COVID-19. Can we get a direction of the train of authority of who make the rules and the regulations that we're under, where they're suggested, where they are actually made, who enforces them, and so forth?
Yeah, so the public health officer in Humboldt County, Dr. Frankovich, has the authority under the California state law to declare a public health emergency. And so she can issue quarantine orders, isolation orders, and which are backed up by the Health and Safety Code, and which means that if you violate the orders, it's a misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in jail or 6 months in jail, $1,000 fine, and so forth and so on. So that takes a law enforcement aspect of enforcement. So that is under the law her right to do so. And so there's several public health emergencies that are public health events, that they do, all the time, when they're reaching out to the community. And this is, unfortunately, being in a pandemic, is unprecedented times where, the whole United States and California and Humboldt County is dealing with this public health event. So, but locally, it's our public health officer that initially made that public health emergency. And then when it started affecting the entire county, that's when I stepped in and declared a local emergency. And so as the sheriff, I'm the director of our Office of Emergency Services. And so at that point in time, I'm directing the overall emergency response for this COVID emergency. And so under her direction, where she provides the guidance of how, we have to shelter in place, and then the essential businesses being opened up and closed, and then providing guidance on what essential travel is, and so forth and so on. That's kind of essentially her overall decision, because she makes the order. But we've had, over the last month or so, we've had essentially a policy group put in place to assist with kind of making those decisions. But ultimately, it's her name on the order, and she's making that order to the county.
All right. How much of that is influenced? Could we hear the governor of our state, make suggestions and so forth? But these are suggestions, is my understanding, and thus, as you said, the policies are actually set locally here. But how much of the influence from Sacramento is put upon these decisions, and how much of that might be, and you may not be able to answer that, kind of political? Because if we don't follow the heat of what is being suggested by Sacramento, then we may be subject to future restrictions or challenges with financial aid from the state, et cetera.
You're exactly right, Rollin. So this is this overall emergency. There is emergency dollars that are tied to this, and so we have to make sure that we adhere to the governor's guidelines in order to really be eligible for reimbursement for spending money during this emergency. So we're very, very cognizant of that. Under his direction, he declared a shelter in place essentially the same time we did here locally. But again, enforcement and the direction comes from the local public health officer, and so it essentially is our law of the land here is from our own order. And I'm happy to say that our order, though a lot of people have criticized it, is less restrictive than other parts of the county, other parts of the state. And so we recognize that here in Humboldt, we do have a lot more open space. We do have a less population, 4,000 square mile county. And so we can essentially social distance a lot better than some of the other counties. But we're very, very cognizant of everything that the governor is saying. His 6 points of reopening the economy and reopening and kind of lifting the orders of shelter in place. There's some specifics in there, but that we're trying to get to try and make sure that we can start opening up and make sure that we have a framework in place so that if there are widespread outbreaks of the coronavirus, that we're able to be reactive to that. But I think in the next couple of weeks here, you're going to see some changes. You're going to see some lifting and a little more clarification of what can be open and how we're going to kind of have a framework to kind of open things back up here in the county.
Sheriff Honsal, a two-part question for me, JB. How much enforcement of this have you had to do, and how has the pandemic affected your ability to police Humboldt County?
So this is made a huge effect, JB. This is something that has affected all law enforcement. Essentially, I have control of the jail, and the jail has 417 beds. And one of our first things that we had to deal with is what happens if we have an outbreak in the jail. There's no way to control it, and so the first thing we had to do is essentially put some lockdowns on the jail, and people that were eligible for release, we had to release them, and a lot of these releases were early, and so that's very, very frustrating for me and law enforcement. But it is a way to control our population because we have to have a quarantine area now. So when someone does commit a violent offense or a serious felony, I want to make sure that there are room for the jail to hold that person. And so we actually have an isolation area to where if someone is bad enough to get arrested now and be put into jail, that we have a space for them to be essentially isolated for 14 days to ensure that they don't have the COVID. And then once they are clear and free of that 14 days and they're symptom free, then we put them in our general population.
You mentioned that, you've got some ideas of being able to move forward and starting to ease some restrictions. We just 20 minutes ago were talking to a doctor out of New Jersey, very familiar with these different medicines and so forth. And his question was posed to him about easing up of restrictions, shelter in place, and so forth. And he said this pandemic has kind of got two folds to be nervous about. One was the virus. The second is what's going to happen socially with mass unemployment, loss of housing, and thus the medical that will come from that kind of unemployment, that kind of housing loss. We've already seen some areas of California starting to ease a little bit, Ventura County, Riverside, but we've also seen reports this morning like Los Angeles. 50% of Los Angeles are unemployed, and we've seen people go from furloughs to now unemployed. How much is that is taken in consideration of the psychological plus the economical, and then the ramifications of all that when we make these decisions in the group that you talked about, deciding what's going to happen here in Humboldt County?
This is huge because, the people that are in the policy group all are connected to Humboldt County, and even though Dr. Frankovich is essentially brand new here to the county, she has a sense of what our county is all about. And so she is asking questions, and she is very, very interested in doing what she can to open up the economy. But she's being very, very cautious about that. And she doesn't want to have a widespread public health outbreak here that we can't control. And so that's our number one concern. We're going to have a framework in place that if we do have an outbreak, our hospitals can treat those people that have the symptoms, or have the virus. But it weighs on all of our minds. Not a lot of us are getting a lot of sleep over it because we're all stressed, like this whole community is stressed out about it. We want to make the best decisions here, for the health and welfare of our community, but also for the overall livelihood of everyone here. And so I'm going to really, really push this week, number one, to get all the essential businesses that are listed in the public health order to open their doors and to start businesses, start bringing people back. When you look at grocery stores, and these people are working day in and day out, they have masks, they have gloves, they're doing everything as far as they can as far as protecting themselves with personal protective equipment, and we haven't had a widespread outbreak. We haven't had an outbreak at all in grocery stores, from these people, and they're the people that are making contact with lots of people every day. So there's no reason why government especially, and some of the other essential businesses that are listed in the order, why they can't open the doors and start business now, bringing people back to work. And so I'm going to really be pushing that this week. There's going to be some other orders that the doctor's going to be talking about, and things are going to be released today about that. And then later on this week, we hope to publish essentially a framework. What are the phases of opening up Humboldt County? So that's kind of our plan right now. And we know, because we have good friends that are unemployed, we have friends that are going to jeopardize in losing housing and those kind of things. So it's on all of our minds. But it's one of those decisions as we have to make. We have to make the decision for the best for our overall community, the health and welfare for our community.
All right. Well, Sheriff Honsal, let me review real quick kind of a timeline. So you've got an idea that you want to try to push some of the essentials based upon seeing where we're at with the virus or the lack of the virus and those that have been open, the restrictions and cautions that they've done, and the success that you've had with that. You said Dr. Frankovich is possibly going to have something released today or tomorrow that's going to outline some of the stuff, and so we might actually see something taking place within 7 days or so?
We're going to see something, I would say, 7 to 14 days, you're going to see some kind of some easing of some of the restrictions. I believe so. I think public health order is going to be likely more defined, but again, it all is all based on, I believe our numbers are going to be the same. I believe that we're going to have really, based on the shelter in place and social distancing, I think our numbers are going to pretty much be the same, unless there's some widespread outbreak for some reason or another. I think we're going to see some changes here in the next 2 weeks that will start opening widespread businesses back open.
Sheriff Honsal, appreciate your time. Final question for me. Obviously, Dr. Frankovich is the health expert, but what input is she taking from yourself and the supervisors as you guys, try to make decisions as a whole?
So we're kind of like, we like to, she's taking advice from everyone. Believe me, she's answering emails, and Board of Supervisors are calling and emailing her, as well as, we meet, 4 to 5 times a week. And with our Office of Emergency Services and Public Health, and Dr. Frankovich and I meet. And so she solicits input, and so she's taking it all in, and so it is one of those things that she is working with all of us, soliciting input and trying to do what's best for the community.
Well, Sheriff, I appreciate you joining us on the program this morning. Thank you very much. As I've mentioned to our supervisors and other elected officials, if you ever want to get a message out there, you just give me a call. We'll get you on anytime. And you yourself be safe, and we'll look forward to getting through all this.
Thanks, Rollin, JB. I appreciate it, man.
Keep up the good work. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, take care.